Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Playeasy Warm Up Podcast, where we dive into the stories of the people shaping the world of sports tourism and events. I'm your host, Carrie Shields, co-founder and president of Playeasy. And today, we're diving into what it takes to host elite track and field events with two key leaders from USA Track and Field. Joining us are Sarah Austin, General Counsel, and Blake Warfield, Compliance and Procurement Manager, who play a crucial role in shaping the future of USATF events across the country. Blake plays a pivotal role in ensuring USATF's events, partnerships, and operations run smoothly while staying within compliance guidelines. Sarah, as General Counsel, oversees the legal side of the organization, tackling everything from governance and contracts to athlete regulations and partnerships. Together, they work behind the scenes to keep USA Track and Field operating at the highest level, supporting athletes, venues, and event organizers across the country. In this conversation, we cover everything from what makes a great host city to how destinations can get involved with USATF events of all sizes. We also explore how innovation and technology are shaping the sport, the road to LA 2028, and their best advice for young professionals looking to break into the sports industry. I loved this conversation with Blake and Sarah. Any opportunity that I have to learn more about behind the scenes of what goes into hosting the types of events that they're running is just an incredible opportunity. And whether you're a destination looking to submit a bid, an event organizer just curious about the process, or just a fan of track and field, this episode has something for you. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Get ready to call dibs. Utah's newest sports megaplex, Western Sports Park, opens spring 2025 in Davis County, Utah's amusement capital. Less than 30 minutes from Salt Lake City, this venue is built to be a game day contender. With 55 acres of multi-purpose fields, top-tier facilities, and amenities for teams, fans, and families alike. Choose from WSP's multiple indoor arenas, 6 full-sized fields, or the stunning championship field, complete with seating for 2,000 and breathtaking mountain views. What truly makes Western Sports Park a winner are the next-level extras. From private flex spaces, a referee lounge, on-site concessions to sensory rooms, and free parking, your team is covered on and off the field. If you're looking for ways to play beyond game day, it's easy. WSP is the newest addition, conveniently located next to Station Park, Davis County's popular entertainment district. Family-friendly restaurants, attractions, and hotels are just steps away. And Utah's only amusement park, Lagoon Park, is only a mile down the road. Give your MVPs the VIP treatment at Western Sports Park. Book now at westernsportspark.com. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Playeasy Warm Up Podcast. Sarah and Blake, thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Very excited, Carrie.
Sure. So to start, can you both share a bit about your roles at USA Track and Field and what a typical day looks like for you?
So I'm the general counsel here at USA Track and Field. Cover a lot of different areas between, the traditional legal side, working with our athlete safety team, as well as doing some other things like working with compliance and sanctions and some different, operational areas within our organization. But as for a typical day, I don't think any of us around here really claim to have a typical day. Things move very, very quickly within sports, so we just kind of go with each day, but that's part of what makes it so fun. So
awesome. Well, again, I'm Blake, Compliance and Procurement Manager. My day-to-day changes constantly. I think what we've learned, you have to be adaptable on the spot. Some stuff comes up, but what I really focus on is our contract closeout process. So we have assets that we have to make sure we receive, deliver. At our annual meeting, I oversee our delegate process, our corporate sponsorship, affiliate program with some of our athletes. And now Sarah and I are excited because now we assist on the RFP process. And then I assist with any other initiatives that we do within the legal department.
And that's how we originally got connected here, was with some of the bids that you have that we'll get into later in this conversation. But to get started, for those who might not know what a governing body is, could you tell me like I'm 10 years old?
Yeah. So USA Track and Field oversees the competitive sport of track and field within the United States. So we do things like help develop and select and then lead teams in international competition. So we send out about 10 teams or so to different competitions throughout the world. But in different areas, we cover track and field, we cover long distance running, we cover para track and field as of this year, which we're very excited about. We also cover race walk. So if you want to compete in any of those, there are programs for you at USA Track and Field, anywhere from age, 7 to 100 plus. We have plenty of older athletes who get involved in our master's programs, and it's very fun to see them still very active at that age. But then down at the youth side, we have Junior Olympics as well as run, jump, throw programs for athletes at that younger stage to get involved and learn the basics of track and field. So we also do things like we have coaching education programs. We work with the agents who work with the elite athletes. We also provide other things that would help assist in providing programming for those sports. So we do things like offer sanctions, which basically guidance for how to operate a track and field or a long distance event. And it also provides them insurance to try to break down some of those barriers so that they can get into the sport and help teach athletes how to operate or, compete in those different areas. So do lots of different things to help grow the sport.
Yeah, and you can, just by that answer, you can tell why every day is different for you guys in how much you're overseeing. And so I think one of the coolest parts about being able to have these conversations with people like yourself is you don't realize how much goes into a governing body or organization outside of just the well-known, we just had the 2024 Olympic Games and thinking that they're just competing on, the national and world stage. And so to hear that there are athletes as young as 7 and as old as 100 competing is really cool to hear. And so with so many stakeholders involved, how do you balance all of those relationships within your organization?
Yeah, great question. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all working towards the same goals. So we work really hard to have strategic initiatives and a strategic plan for those goals on every quadrennial. So most of your national governing bodies are really focused on what they're going to accomplish within the next 4 years, working towards an Olympic Games. So, the beauty is that you've got a lot of stakeholders, but those stakeholders are all here supporting and trying to help the elite athletes. And along the way, we do things for athletes of all ages. But, working towards those same goals really helps.
And specifically for you, Blake and Sarah, how do your roles intersect and how do legal and compliance work together within USA Track and Field?
I think what's important on that standpoint is, with the RFP process, when we receive a bid application, it goes through the correct protocols based on our governance. And then at that point, we have an event agreement with the LOCs and we work with them strategically to make sure that we're following our protocols and procedures. And then we also have the correct staff on site. So we have like an events team that oversees the events. We also have our general managers to sort of see the coaching out there, also with the elite athletes. And then what's exciting is at some of our events, we do a team processing. So it gets our elite athletes ready to go to, our World Indoor Championships or World Outdoor Championships. So it's just making sure that we talk, communicate with each other, communicate with the LOC to put, a great product out on the track.
That's awesome. And we talked before this and you enlightened me on just how many events that you guys are putting on a yearly basis. Could you talk a bit to what some of those events are and how you are involved in running those events?
For sure. So I think before Sarah and I came on, we actually calculated it. At a time, we could have up to 82 plus RFPs out there. So again, it just depends on what time that is. So some of our events, of course, are elite side of stuff. So we have very specific criteria that has to be done and requirements on the track. We also have the same stuff with our youth athletes. So there's very specific, but some of our RFPs with the LDR events or race walk, it could be a subset of an event that an LOC or CBB is holding. So, it is something that the organizations can take a look at. They can go to usatf.org/bids and go on there and see all the different requirements that we have available. Like I said, it's something that if you do a 5K or a 10K and you want USATF to get involved, we can do a championship in conjunction with that event too.
And how do you typically, and that's interesting because we can talk about the specific RFPs that are currently out there, but talking about the subset of some events, how would a destination get involved or at least spark interest in wanting to host one of those events?
For sure. They can, again, like I said, go to our website, but they can also reach out to us. We also have liaisons for the different disciplines we have. So we have someone that oversees LDR, the elite side of stuff, master's program, youth program. They can reach out and we can start those conversations. On our website, it shows where we have awarded different events, but it's just looking at the RFP, reviewing it, and just making sure it fits. As people can see, our RFPs are very specific and very detailed oriented because we know what we need to actually run a successful program. And it's just working in conjunction with them. So if someone does hold a 5K or 10K, we can see, hey, will it fit with the criteria that we have for our elite athletes or any other open or elite event that we're doing?
I think it's important to realize that events are very different. So, depending on what your geography looks like in your city, we've got that mountain ultra trail, right? Or we've got the road races, which tend to be on flatter surfaces. If you have a great track, then both, you've got your masters athletes, you've got your youth athletes. So there are, and then the number of athletes who come to each one of those varies quite a bit. A race walk event may have, less than 50 athletes, where a junior Olympic, we could have 8,000 athletes. So a lot of range.
Yes.
But on top of that, there's also, so we have geographical associations around the country, 56 of them, who they will host their own association championships every year. And then they have regional championships too. So if a city is not quite ready to take on our 8,000 junior Olympic athletes, we understand that. Maybe you could take on a couple hundred within your city who are, need to host a championship there. So we've actually had several conversations with different cities this week alone, and the interest varies and the needs vary, but we've got a program for just about everything.
I love that. That's a famous saying from the NCAA championships bid cycle, is that there's a host city for a championship for everyone. And so just being able to have the flexibility of just not just those large scale events, but some of the smaller events that you can be a little bit more flexible of. I know that destinations will be happy to hear that. And so I know you currently have 3 open RFPs on Playeasy with the bid deadline in March. So coming up here pretty soon, as we are in March. Can you share more about what you're looking for in potential host destinations and what factors play the biggest role in your selection process?
Sure. I think Sarah stated it perfectly from the beginning. Our events range by 50 athletes up to 8,000 or 7,000. I know the RFPs that are currently available is more for our youth-specific side. So you're looking at, on average about 7,000 athletes for a junior Olympic program. And usually that's about 17,500 spectators, up to 40,000 room nights at an LOC or CVB. So it's just making sure that that would work well with organizations. And then we also have our youth outdoor, which is a smaller subset. So it's about 1,600 athletes with about 4,000 spectators on average. So at the end of the day, we just want to make sure it fits with the CVB and the LOC. There's enough spectator seating. At the end of the day, it's about, especially on a youth side, it's about the athlete experience. We want it to be fluid, everything runs smoothly, because we want, the athletes to want to come back to the CVB, want to come back to the LOC, and just want to, keep staying involved with USA Track and Field. Our goal would love to see some of these athletes become Olympians down the road. So if we can give them that phenomenal program and have them keep escalating, keep moving forward to being an elite athlete, I think that's what we really involve with on the youth side of stuff.
That's great. And you mentioned earlier the LOCs. And so could you talk a bit about how USA Track and Field collaborates with different destinations to host your events?
For sure. So the RFPs are very detailed, specific on what the LOC is responsible for and what the national office is responsible for. I'm sorry, event agreement really breaks that down, but it's us having a conversation with them. When we've talked to these CVBs or LOCs, we told them, put your best bid forward. We'll review that. We'll talk to the different liaisons and the different committees to see if this is going to be a good fit for us. I think what Sarah and I are very excited now is, being involved with the Playeasy platform. We've talked to destinations that we haven't talked to before. We're excited to go to different areas and just continually grow USA Track and Field because it is a fundamental sport at the end of the day. So being able to go to different destinations, I think, is very important for us.
To Blake's point earlier, when you're talking about those larger events, 7,000 youth running around, we have staff that's on site. So we work with, the destination very closely as you're leading up to those events and then during the event to kind of problem solve and deal with things as they come up and make sure that everything is, moving together and seamlessly as well as possible. So a lot of planning time goes into that as well, site efforts. So, but every city is just a little different, so we got to stay on our toes. So.
I can only imagine. But I think that's one of the coolest parts. We worked with the NCAA in this year's past bid cycle, and now recently working with you guys. I think your name can be intimidating for some of these host destinations, in that they see these large scale events and see that RFP coming through and might hesitate to say, hey, that's just not something that our smaller city, or we don't have the resources. And so I love that we are a part of making that connection point and kind of easing some of that hesitation to get involved in the conversation of hosting one of your events. And so I just love to hear that, and that we're helping in that way. And so do you have an example of a successful destination partnership that you've had in the past?
I think it's hard to just narrow it down to one.
Yeah.
The one that we've worked with recently and for the last couple of years is Hayward Field, so in Eugene, Oregon, with Tri-Town USA. So they're an LOC that we have, developed a relationship with all these years. What was exciting is back in 2022, we actually hosted the World Outdoor with World Athletics. So that was a phenomenal event to be a part of. Just the experience of having all these elite athletes coming from different nations and competing on U.S. soil, and our athletes to compete on U.S. soil at this event. The cool part is the following year in 2023, we actually had our USATF National Junior Olympic program at Hayward Field as well. So our youth athletes were able to compete in the same location that our elite athletes were. And Hayward Field and Tri-Town USA went above and beyond. With the fan experience zone was great, the warm-up facility, the kids were able to see their face in the spotlight. They were able to see themselves on the video board. So they were at an award ceremony. So they really felt like they are an elite athlete to get them to that next level. And a lot of the LOCs we work with do that same type of commitment as well. But I think Hayward Field and Tri-Town USA is probably the one that we've had really great success with recently.
Yeah, we have. We've done all ages there as far as track goes. So that's been great.
And I'm a former basketball player, and I'm not currently playing pro. And so when I look back at my time in playing growing up, it's all about the athletic experience and the time that you have with your team and your family and coaches while traveling to those cities for that experience. And so it's great to hear that that is a core value of what USA Track and Field is trying to do, is create that professional experience for all ages. And I think gives destinations the ability to think bigger in terms of how can they make it the best experience possible for any type of event, which is great. And so how does compliance play a role in managing destination partnerships, especially when it comes to sponsorships, contracts, and event regulations?
I think we have strategic people in the correct spots. When it comes to sponsorship, we have a chief marketing officer who sort of oversees that program. But then it's also working with the LOCs and the CVBs to try to figure out how they can also generate revenue at their event. And then making sure that at the end of the day, the event agreement is done correctly. We have liaisons, like a youth liaison who's responsible for making sure that everything is done correctly leading up, like packet pickup set up. So we are very strategic on making sure that we have meetings with the LOCs ahead of the game to make sure, hey, here's exactly what we need to sort of pull off a successful event. And like Sarah initiated before, is that at the event, we have specific staff in place to make sure that everything rolls smoothly. And, we're starting to work on event recap reports for us to be able to figure out what worked well, what could be better, and to just make sure we're constantly being fluid and making sure we understand what we can do to make a better product out on the track or out on the road races or at our long distance running events.
Yeah, I mean, the key to all of that is communication, right? So we really focus on communicating throughout the process, making sure that we have all of those key people involved as we go through, that there are no surprises that pop up at the last minute. So we've had a lot of changes here within USA Track and Field over the last few months, some reorganization, which is why you've got new faces involved in that bid process. But we've also got new faces involved in our events team and our youth team as well. So as we go through some of these reorganizations, it's really, really important to us that we communicate a lot in advance and just make sure that everybody's expectations are addressed up front and that we're all focused on the same thing at the end. It goes back to those strategic goals, right? make sure that we're all working together.
And communication is key when you have a million things going on at the same time across many different lines of people. I know that from starting this company, it is key to everything that you do. And so I wanted to ask a few questions, more personal questions on what's something about your role that people would be surprised to learn.
Yeah, I mean, my role is fairly standard, right? If you know anything about the legal world, general counsel's role, I mean, we do all things legal. We're involved in all the contracts and certainly handling RFPs and that kind of thing. But there are some other sides here within the sports world that you get to get involved in that are so much fun. So, as Blake mentioned earlier, the team selection process, we're involved in that. So we help write the selection procedures for how you make one of those international teams. But then we also help athletes who maybe don't quite have the eligibility to be able to run. So we'll help them figure that out if they need to transfer from one country to the other and that kind of thing. So while we tend to be a very behind the scenes role, we still do get involved and have that connection point with the athletes from time to time. And I think anybody who works in sports will tell you there's nothing better than that moment when an athlete just even quietly has that thank you, that you help them get to where they are. And that's a fantastic moment.
I would piggyback off of a lot of what Sarah said as well. But when I switched over to the legal department on the compliance side of stuff, Sarah told me, you're going to love how to read. You're going to love that process. And then also into detail. Especially on my side of stuff, it's just making sure that we follow correct protocols, procedures, that the events are done correctly, that we follow up, we get everything that we want. So I have learned to read a lot more and pay a lot more attention to everything that I do. Because at the end of the day, when Sarah and I are talking or we shoot an email, that, we represent ourselves, but we also represent USA Track and Field. So we have to make sure that we are professional at all times and follow the attention to detail for sure.
And I got the chills as you say that. I have a unique perspective because my mom does work in compliance. She was a former guest of ours. So I see all of the behind the scenes work that goes into making sure an athlete gets to the point of graduation in her work. And so I'm sure you guys feel the same when you get to be a part of some of those events and see your athletes succeed. So that's really cool to hear. And so we're coming off the 2024 Olympic Games, and track and field gained significant attention on both traditional and social media during the Olympics and Paralympics. How do you think the media coverage of these inspiring stories impact the awareness and growth of the sport?
I mean, I think they're absolutely necessary, right? USA Track and Field's interesting that, it's individual competitors. They come together as a team to go and compete internationally, but they're still individual competitors. And so trying to get their stories out is how we bring attention to those athletes. And it's how they continue to do what they do, right? Governing bodies were all nonprofits. So as a nonprofit, it's really important that we get all of the attention to our athletes that we can, because all of that support that comes back to the athletes is what helps them do what it is that they love to do. And I'll tell you, I mean, even if you're sitting at home watching these athletes at the games, and our team got 34 medals this year for the Olympic Games, which was amazing. Of course, our goals for the next one, 2028 in Los Angeles, are even higher. So very excited about that. And I love supporting the athletes in that way. But then even, I mentioned that we just brought Paralympic track and field on board, and they brought home 38 medals in 2024, which is amazing. So, but we're really looking forward to help support them as they move forward. And so I'm sure you've seen some of the coverage out there. I think everybody saw, if the worlds compete. So you've got them for the first time this year going to get to compete in the same national championships. So being able to bring that story about, bring more attention to our Paralympic athletes as well, I think is wonderful.
I'll say off of that, my producer is a big USA Track and Field fan, and she wanted me to ask specifically about the Woodalls. So she will be thrilled to hear that they will be competing in the same event. We will definitely be tuning in. And I was actually at Cava yesterday, and I was coming out, and Gabby Thomas was on the cover of Cava, and I was like, how cool is it to see that kind of representation for female athletes, and a story that I learned so much of just from this past Olympics. Just really cool to see that kind of representation across all sports. And so what advice would you give to young professionals looking to get into sports?
Yeah, for me, I would say, get involved, make connections, and show that passion. So much of sports it's a grind. It really is. But you've got to have that passion behind it, and seeing that can really connect and impact other people. So getting out there, get involved in some of the events that are either local to you or even some of the national events. Volunteer wherever you can, learn as much as you can along the way, but make connections as you do that. So ask questions, meet with people, learn about what they're doing so that you can be a little bit more focused in what it is that you want to do when you get into sports.
To piggyback off of what Sarah said, I think, in the beginning, when you were asking about what our day-to-day is, it's the adaptability. I think is very important in the sports sector. You could be doing one thing, then all of a sudden something else comes up. So it's being adaptable, but then also showing your value. So learning on the side, constantly being involved. Try to take that initiative on different projects. I think that's something that I think would really excel someone. I always think in the back of my head, there could be someone behind me that wants my job. What am I doing to further myself? What am I doing to bring value to an organization? So I think that's something that a lot of young professionals should think about in the back of their head.
I love both of those, and something I want to touch on deeper is just that volunteering aspect. And I mean, the adaptability, there's no better way of learning to adapt than participating in sports as you grow up. And I think that's something that I've really learned as well. But also just being exposed to what a job like yours entails. And I think a great way to get involved is by that volunteering aspect. How do you get people involved in volunteering in cities that you're going to for your events?
That's a great question. I'll tell you, traditionally, we've always left that up to the destination to really pull in some of their volunteers that they've got in the city. We do have a great membership of volunteers. So, our officials who will travel the entire country to go in and help with different events. We've got committees that support each one of the different areas of our sport. So whether that be, what Blake was mentioning earlier, our youth side or our masters, our older athletes, or, the development of the men's and women's track and field or long distance running. We've got fantastic volunteers within our organization who travel to each one of those and help support. But aside from that, we're taking some new direction here and trying to create our own pool of volunteers, because you're right, in some areas it's tough to find volunteers. And so we've got to work to help those destinations do that. So that is kind of a new initiative that we're starting here just recently to try to get volunteers across the country who are willing to help out at our different events.
That's great. And I think, is there, as you're looking towards, it seems like we're looking forward to the future a lot, but how do you think innovation has played a role with the growth of USA Track and Field?
Boy, great question. Well, outside my realm, but I will tell you, I think there's always innovation needed when you're talking about developing elite athletes who just continue to push that boundary, right? I mean, it's amazing what they accomplish, and doing so requires a very keen eye to innovation within that space. So we have a great team within our high performance development team who work on all of that and work with our athletes to continue to innovate within the sport. But, on top of that, our international federation continues to review that as well and see what they can do to try to make sure that the sport stays where it needs to stay and that kind of thing. But as you mentioned earlier, there's also the social media aspect. So, the things that we do within there to try to bring attention to our various athletes and the sport overall, I think is part of our steps to innovate as well.
Love it. And so what is a moment or event that made you especially proud to be a part of your organization?
I think it comes down to, like Sarah has said and myself, is being involved in different events, especially when it comes to team processing. What's awesome is, athletes come in there, they compete, and hey, they made a national team. So it's being there to watch them throughout that process, especially for the 24 Olympics at Olympic trials, watching them try on the kit. This could be their first Olympics they've been to, or their second or third. But just seeing that process, because think of all the work that they've done since they were, a youth athlete, working their way all the way up to the elite side of stuff. So being able to be there for them, seeing their joy and happiness, and watching them compete, while we're sitting at home and they're in, Paris competing and bringing home the 34 medals or the 38 medals for para. It was just a phenomenal experience to see them compete and do very well. So I think that's what we're looking forward to, is seeing the success that they can do in 28 at LA.
Absolutely. I say for me, I've definitely had moments over the years where I've worked one-on-one with certain athletes. And, when you're at the Olympic trials and volunteering in different ways, and you can stop just for a minute to watch them compete, and you see them first place or, second or third place, and that they're going on to be on the team that year. It's so exciting. Like, you kind of feel their joy, moment where everything that they're out there experiencing, you feel like you helped make that happen, even in the smallest little way. So it's very exciting. It's a very touching moment to get to experience with an athlete.
Those are both great answers, and you've given me the chills twice now thinking about those. It's when all your hard work feels like it pays off. All of the craziness really just it makes it seem all worth it. So as I know, we're in March now, so a bit into 2025. But what are you most looking forward to this year?
What does anybody in the national governing body area not just say, like, everything that we're doing for LA 28, right? Like, everything, it starts now. It doesn't start in 28. It doesn't start, in 27. It starts right now. And so all the planning that we're doing and all the discussions that we're having about how we're going to try to, to your point, innovate even more to try to help those athletes get just, a little bit further, a little bit faster, a little bit, whatever. But, yeah, it's exciting to be at the front end of a quad and know that you're planning towards something with these very high and lofty goals, but with every expectation of meeting those goals. It's fun.
Blake, how about you?
I feel like I've been doing this all day. But to Sarah's point, we have so much work that we need to do to get ready through 2028. We have a lot of events that we have to do. Yearly we have elite events, youth events. So it's just prepping, these events prep them to get ready for the Olympic Games. So just making sure that we're ahead of the game, reaching out to these new destinations, going to different places. I think having these conversations ahead of the game to be like, hey, here's where we're going to go in 26, 27. So the athletes can start getting prepared and prepped for the different locations that we could do. At the end of the day, we're trying to prep them to get them ready to, hey, you do well at these championships, go to Olympic trials in 28, potentially make the team and, come home with a gold medal. I think there's nothing else that, furthers our sport and furthers the excitement of our staff to give back.
Well, you never know which one of those events might create the next, Olympic medalist. Which little kid is deciding at that moment, this is what I'm going to do. This is, where all my efforts are going to go.
I think we might need to make this a bi-yearly conversation until 2028, because I know things are going to be constantly evolving and changing, and we're going to continue to learn more. And it's going to be here before you know it. And so, so just to end this conversation, what would you, if you were to leave here, what would you want a destination to know about USA Track and Field?
Boy, from my perspective, I want them to understand that we are really looking to partner with new cities and open up new opportunities for all levels of athletes. We want to have those conversations. We want to talk to them about what that looks like within their city, whether that means they're hosting Mountain Ultra Trail events, which there are several of, race walk, or whether that's that big, Junior Olympic or Masters event. There's, like we said earlier, something for every destination. And we want to have those conversations and see what that looks like for them.
Yeah, I would agree. Again, our events can range from as little as 25 athletes all the way up to 7,000, 8,000 athletes. So it's just having those conversations, communicating with the different LOCs, CVBs. At the end of the day, it's about the athlete experience, the fan experience. We do want to keep continuing our sport, bringing it to different areas, different locations. I think that's important. And again, we always have bids available. So they're able to go on there, to usatf.org/bids, or they can email Sarah and I at bids@usatf.org for additional information. We're more than happy to schedule a call with them, talk to them. I think one CVB that we talked to was actually interested in one of our youth events. So they thought about flying out to see what one of those events are, which I think is a great opportunity for CVBs to just come out there, see what one of our events is like and say, hey, we can probably put something like this on. So I think having that conversation with them is very important.
And there's always our annual meeting as well. So as an organization, we have an annual meeting every year, the first week or so of December for approximately 1,000 to 1,200 of our organizational members who get together to help run the sport. So that's always an opportunity as well.
That's awesome. And you took my last question. So where's the best way to get in touch with you? But Sarah and Blake, this has been such a pleasure as, being able to be a part of something that helps an organization as prominent as you guys is kind of a pinch me moment for us. And so I really just want to thank you and thank you for taking the time. I was serious when I said I think we should make this a biannual conversation leading up to 2028. But I know that all of our destination partners will get a lot of knowledge out of this conversation. And so thank you so much for being here.
Well, we are extremely grateful for the platform. I think one of the hardest things is reaching people you're not already reaching, right? So to get to talk to all of those other cities and have them hear our words through you is a really fantastic moment. So thank you.
All right. Thank you guys. And thanks everyone. Until next time. See you later.